What's going on, everybody? Shane here. Today we're going to take another look, as promised, at the Vargo Hexagon Wood Stove. Now this is the titanium version that was sent to me from Vargo, and this whole thing kind of came about because I was watching some reviews done on some other stoves. Now those reviews, or first impressions on some of the other stoves, I don't really want to call it a review if somebody's taking a brand new stove out of a case and they're using it for their first time. If they revisit it, I think that's a better review, but let's call it a first impression. Let's call it what it is. So I watched many videos of people giving their impressions on stoves, and I realized that a lot of them that were given really poor impressions were purely operator error, or simply operator error. And looking back at myself, because I can be just as guilty as everybody else, I think that I gave the Vargo Hexagon Wood Stove probably the worst rating of all. I had said many times that the stove was inefficient. I said that the burn chamber was too small, it needed a lot of babysitting, and I'm not going to take any of what I said back, because to me it was the truth. Now a lot of that may have been operator error. So to put that aside and to give the stove a fair shake, I'm going to go out and reuse it again. I'm not going to do any modifications to the stove. I'm going to use the stove purely as it was meant to be used. I'm in right now at the moment because it is rather windy outside, which for a stove, that's actually a really good thing, because it can help feed the stove. But I want to give the stove a fair shake. I think that I owe it that much. So before I do that, let's take a look at something real quick. This is how the stove sits. It is titanium. It opens up fairly simple, and it literally just pops together. That's Franklin style door and everything else. But more importantly, I want you all to see how simple it is. What's not to truly love about this stove? I want to like this stove, and I've said it before. It's just proven to me in the past that it was really ineffective. Now I'm going to be honest with you, I have not used this stove in years, literally years. So I'm going to give it another fair shake, or at least I'm going to try to do justice by the stove, and I'm going to let the stove purely do the talking for itself. If you can take anything from this video, I hope that you would take your own opinion on the stove purely by not what I say, but by what you see. Alright, so enough about me. Let's go take a look at this stove. Okay, so we're just going to open up the door here so you can see me fill it. I am going to take the wood that I have laid next to the stove here, and I'm just going to drop it in. Nothing spectacular, okay? I'm going to try to burn the stove a couple different ways, so you are going to see that. First one I'm going to do is just merely lay the wood in here. I do want to be able to close this door, so here we go. Now when I'd used the stove before, I filled the stove up per the directions actually that Vargo has on their video, and I lit it from like down here. I put my tinder at the base and I stacked the wood all the way around it. And honestly, to me, that was very inefficient. I ended up filling the stove up with wood. I kept burning wood until finally I got good enough coals to actually start cooking on. I didn't want to be doing all that work by the time I came to use the stove. I just wanted to cook. So I'm going to try to do, which based on this design, okay, this is based on the design in my opinion, it's very similar. It's not a double walled, but it's very similar to a TLUD stove. It is a top light updraft stove. So I'm going to try to light it from the top, and hopefully we'll see what happens from there. And I will time the burn, or actually I'll time the boil, because I will be boiling water. I will be using one of my own personal kits that I use a lot, because if I'm going to do a test, this is still a test for myself. So one of the cups that I use a lot would be my titanium canteen cup. So I will, I apologize, I'm trying to get my lid out. So I'll be doing the burn here, And then I'll also try a larger amount of water, and this is also titanium. This is my titanium Keith 1 liter kettle. So these are the pots I'm going to be using to test out. I'll be doing 1 cup, and then I will be doing a liter of water. And the reason why I'm going to be doing that is because these are something that I normally use a lot. So like I said, I will be doing a test on this, but also the test is mainly for myself. To light this today, I'm going to be using a section of the egg drop fire starter that Bob Knight has sent me. I love these things. I can cut just a small chunk of this off, just drop it in there, and it is super convenient. Literally, just take a small chunk of it off there. That's all I'm going to do to light the stove. So hopefully it works out. Okay, now that the wood has started, there we go, I started the stopwatch. My goal is to not have to feed the stove too many times. So what I'm going to be doing is, this is the first burn. This is how we're going to be doing it. I want to stack it. I want to see how long this will burn, how long this will last. And in the process, see how many cups of water I can get to boil on it. I'm not really going to boil or time my water boiling, because honestly, I just want to see how efficient the stove is for the length of time it'll last with wood. That may seem like an odd test to most, but you know what? That's just what I'm extremely curious about. Water is getting ready to boil. Make sure that when you do open this Franklin door, that you do not use your hands. I've got a really good burn in there, and I've got really good coals. I have really good coils. I have really good coals in there. So if I open up this door, the fire does start to burn even higher and faster, as you can tell. When I close the door, the actual fire right here starts to swirl. As you can see, the flame's actually reaching way up here. But it goes down, the coals start to glow even more so, and I can tell that it's pulling from under here. And then once again, I open it up. You can see just a little bit, and just the fire goes kind of crazy. Honestly, so far, this test has been a better test than my very first experience with this stove in general. You can see that we are at 10 minutes and 24 seconds since I lit the stove. Alright, we are at a rolling boil. So this is funny, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to discard this water. I'm going to see if I can get another cup of water to boil. I'm going to stop the timer there. It is 14:23. That is the time that I did not get another boil. My water did get hot. It is steaming, but I did not get another boil there. And I stopped it because my last flame had just gone out. Oh, now see, that's something that is kind of a pain in the butt here. Let me move the camera down and I'll show you. I won't move the stove at all. Okay, so I opened up the door, and as you can see here, when I did open up the door, it came out from the lock there that's actually holding the bottom platform. Now, as hot as the stove is right now, I don't really want to touch it. I'm going to knock my coals out because, let's see here, did it burn everything to a coal? Let's just open the whole stove up. These are all coals. I have, looks like just 2 sticks right here. Everything, oh, maybe 3. Everything else is pretty much a coal. That was a nice burn. You know, it really was a good, efficient burn. I have seen some stove mods and hacks where people have actually taken a bobby pin and stuck it through there, so that wouldn't happen. But like I did say, I am not going to do any modifications to the stove. I'm purely going to burn it the way it's supposed to burn. So from the time the last flame went out, the way I had it from a top light, it was a slow light. I got a cup of water to a nice rolling boil. I could probably do 2 cups easily, so I'm going to try 2 cups of my next test after my next 1 cup test with a different fire stack. So, but yeah, not bad. Everything is burning out. I'm going to push these coals over here to the side because I'm going to keep burning. Now, I'm going to let the stove cool down before I start fiddling with it, and we'll be back. Alright, so the stove is cooled off, as you can tell. I'm going to open this door. Now, I think that another thing that you could probably do to keep this hinge from popping out is even if you just had a stick. You know, I'm not going to do it, but if you took a stick and just stuck it in the ground right there, or a tent stake, stuck it in the ground, it'd keep that from happening as well. From the heat, the door did get a little tighter. It was, there we go. I think it's not really so much the heat as it was the coals, but here we go. So, once again, this time we're actually going to do something a little different with the wood. We're going to stack it upright. See if I can get a rough measurement here so I know how long I can have my sticks. It might be a little difficult to do, but yeah, put it on its side, huh? Fill it up. We'll try it like that. We'll put it on its side, fill it up like that. Something different, something I just want to try. So, is it necessarily the right way? No. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way to burn a stove. But yeah, like I said, I want to give it a fair shake. So I don't want to make it so that it's so hard I can't put a pot on top of it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut some wood up, break some of these twigs up, and I'll bring you back. I'm sure you don't want to watch me fill this whole thing up. Okay, I filled it up pretty far. I don't want to fill it up all the way. I could and then just close the door completely, but I want to use roughly about the same amount of wood that I did in the other burn. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to light it here on the top of the stove. One thing I noticed I probably won't be able to do is open the stove. Just because of the direction of the wood, it will fall out. That probably wouldn't be so great, but doesn't matter. This is a test. So I'm going to get another piece of this fire starter from Bob Knight, which I said before I've coined years ago as the egg drop fire starters, and we'll give her a light. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and light this fire starter here. And that's it. $14.23.03 was the burn of the last one, total burn, until the last flame went out. The wood is already caught. So here we go. I've got dust all over my You can see that it's already started. I'm at 7 seconds. So here we go. Okay, I have my 1 cup of water. I'm gonna let some of this kind of burn down so I can get, as you can tell, the wood's a little uneven there. It's all good. The wood has already lit. Well, it really seems to me that putting the wood upright is definitely giving me a lot more flow. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and move my pot the rest of the way on there. But yeah, it's this way with the wood, you know, straight up and down versus just stacked. Given it's going to give you a better airflow, it's going to give you more air, it's going to oxygenate your fire more, it's going to pull the oxygen up through the wood to where I have my flame at the top to make it burn all the way down. Very similar to a Swedish fire torch. In fact, I think what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to go and do a Swedish fire torch on the next burn and see just how efficient it is. And then when I'm done, oh, there goes my bag. Then when I'm done, I am going to cook, or I'm going to boil a 1 liter pot of water on top of it with what I think is the best fire setup for this stove for my own personal use. And you know, kind of just go from there. So so far this has been a pretty fun test. All right, we're sitting at 11 minutes 9 seconds and the fire is still going strong. If you can see down in the base of the stove there, we still have a really nice flame going. It's been right at 12 minutes right now. So far this seems to be an extremely efficient way to burn. In fact, let's see if I can open up this door now without the fear of wood falling. There we go. Far so good. Hoping you can pick up on the sound of the stove. It is literally sounding like a rocket stove right now. Let me see if I blow on it. That is cool. It's definitely getting some serious drag. That is cool. Love that sound. Okay, I think that is the last of my still small flame in there. I really don't think it's doing much justice, so we're gonna call that time right there. And the time is exactly 17:15. That is a very long burn for a small stove. Wow. Wow, that was a very long burn. So let's open it up, see what we've got here for coals. It really didn't burn the coals as small, but they're still hot too, as you can see. They're burning. I could put bread on top of here and toast bread. I could still use this to cook meat on. I could grill meat straight over the top of this. So just because the flame is not necessarily burning high does not mean that I cannot use these coals to cook on. But I called the time at, oh, just caught my stick on fire, at 17, oh, whatever it was, 17:15 or something like that. So anyway, we are going to go on next to a Swedish torch style, similar to this, but a little bit larger. Once these coals, I'm going to move these coals over to the side, and I'm not going to fool with the stove while it's warm. I want a good burn, so we'll move these coals over here to the side again and let them burn. We'll reload the stove when it's cool. It is cooled down. Alright, as you can tell, I'm stacking the wood in here like a Swedish fire torch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use this fire starter here. If I can keep the wind from putting it out. The wind is not my friend right now. There we go. So I'm going to put this right here. And like the last test, it was extremely clear that having the wood stacked like this really creates almost like a flue for the air to come up through. So with the conical shape of the stove and the wood stacked in this direction, I think that it'll have a better burn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my Keith titanium kettle. My Keith titanium kettle. This is a 1 liter kettle. And I'm going to do 1 liter of water on this setup here. I think it's going to be efficient. I think it's going to work well. This is a good setup for somebody who doesn't want to feed their stove. Now, a lot of us do enjoy feeding stoves. That's not a problem. But I want to try to get as good of a burn from the stove as possible. Like I said before, I didn't think I gave it a fair shake. So now see, at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and let her go. Well, we are burning extremely well still. Extremely well, and we are sitting at pull it up here. We're already at 11 minutes. It's doing good. Let's check it out. That's awesome. All right, I'm gonna stop it. There's still some going in there, but not enough that's gonna count. It's right at 23:33. So not extremely long, not a heck of a lot longer, and it's still burning, but you can see down in here it's still burning, but just, you know, not to the point where it's really going to be affecting a boil time or anything like that. But yeah, so far, honestly, what I thought was true, I'm gonna have to chalk up to actually the use of this stove from my own personal experience has been operator error in the past. This stove has been burning actually quite efficiently. I've jumped the gun and pulled the coals out. Over here next to the stove is where the coals have been. They've burned all the way out, so it's been getting a good solid burn throughout the stove. Yeah, I definitely, personally, I've been selling the stove short. I would give an apology, but you know, I'm not, because I think that if you're going to use a stove, that you need to be able to have a stove that's going to perform, you know, no matter what your user experience is. So for me, being new to stoves, somewhat new to stoves, at the time of me using the stove the first time and getting a very, very bad experience, that's not, you know, uncommon, but it's you know, I mean, it happens. But the fact that I came back to use the stove again, I'm glad I did, because it's actually, the stove's actually not too bad. It really isn't. Yeah, but like I was saying, you know, a stove should be extremely user-friendly, no matter what your experience is. I don't know why I was getting bad burns to begin with. I think that during the Vargo Hexagon Wood Stove video, I think that I got a better burn versus what they show in their official video on how to light the stove. Now, they create the stove. They're going to show how they prefer you to use it. Now, in my opinion, I think that you get a better burn in these options here. Like you can see right now, this is still burning. If I stick my stick down in here, okay, it's catching on fire. So there you go, you can see that. Yeah, so anyway, you know, guys, I'll close up on this more inside. Oh, I did get a decent boil on there, but my battery and my camera was dying, so I went to charge my camera. I did get a decent boil in the 1 liter pot. I'm going to visit. I'm going to put this right here. I'm going to visit the stove again, and the next time I do that, I am going to be cooking on it. Now that I've played around with it some, I've become more comfortable with the way to use this stove. Kind of found out some quirks about the stove a little bit, which there really isn't much that you need to know about the stove. Now, here's a good example of something for some people. Okay, so here it is, time. I've burned the stove, I've used the stove. It's almost all the way burned out, but I realize I want to cook more food. I want to reload it. So while we're talking, let's just reload the stove. And let's see how well it lights back up. Because it's not uncommon for a lot of us to be cooking something, maybe not paying attention to the stove, and next thing you know, your fire has gone out. And some stoves are hard to light once they've gone, you know, to coal. Now the thing is with the conical shape of this stove and the wide base and the narrow top, look at that, it's already going. I did not think it was going to be as effective as it was, but for the shape and the updraft design on the bottom, let me show you that. Look at that. So the stove has impressed me. It is user-friendly. I wouldn't say that it's extremely user-friendly per anybody who just walk. I don't want to burn my silicone handles on my pot. Stove kind of shocked me a little bit. You can burn any other debris in there as well, but I wouldn't say that it's exactly user-friendly for the beginner, because I think you'd get very frustrated with a stove like this if you try to burn it per their video instructions. That's my opinion on the matter. The one thing that I do not like about this stove would have to be over here on this side. I'm gonna have to change the angle. Let me change the angle real quick. Okay, so one thing that I am not too impressed with about this stove would be this latch right here where it actually hinges into. That is a lock. It's more like a spring, a metal spring lock, where it's bent over, and then the pressure from the spring lock, or the pressure from the metal bent over, locks this part of the back side of the hinge where the door sits. When you're pulling the door open, it does put pressure right here, which will pull this off of the latch. Now there's two ways to fix that, I believe. Let's let this noisy car driving up the front of my, there we go, pass. I think that you could put a stone here, you could put a tent stake there, you could put a stick in the ground right here, which would stop that from opening up, take the pressure off of that, or you could take a bobby pin and slide through there if you wanted to carry a bobby pin with you. I think that would lock it up as well. So in closing, I think that I given this stove a much better burn, a much better chance. I want to chalk some of it up to experience and the fact that I completely failed the stove to begin with. It did not fail me. I'm going to close this video out where it's not so windy. One thing I want to touch on, I know it's going to be windy, but one thing I want to touch on is once the coals are burned out and you want to let your stove, now see, this is titanium, so this stove is pretty much already cooled down. It is going to take a little longer with the stainless steel stove. But another, I don't necessarily think that Vargo on their video is telling you to do something wrong. I think they're just approaching it in a very confusing manner for people who aren't used to stoves. In the video they show you cooling down the stove and washing it down with water. Don't ever pour water on a hot stove. Hot metal will become brittle. The hinges will start to warp. Let the stove cool down naturally. Once it's cooled down naturally, you can clean it, you know, but just for yourself, don't cool down a stove with water. It's not good. Any metal is going to warp a little bit once it's been hot. This titanium actually has held up extremely well. As you can see that there. If I can get a better angle here. Everything still seems to be streamlined and straight. But yeah, don't pour water on your stove. Alright, we'll close up. Alright everyone, well, as I kind of thought, a lot of it had to do with operator error. I'm glad that I did come back and take another approach at this stove, using different methods to light the stove and to burn the stove. I really was going for a very minimal feed. Now I do enjoy feeding the stoves, but my last run-in, my last experience, granted it was a few years ago with the stove, really left a sour taste in my mouth because I was constantly feeding it and I didn't get to really enjoy it because I was literally trying to feed it to keep it going. This go round, it was very enjoyable. I tried like 3 different methods. All 3 honestly were really good and they will work just fine. I believe you can use a solid fuel in this stove. You'd have to come up with a plate to make for it. You definitely can use an alcohol burner in it. So that's another option, but as being 100% sold on the stove being my standalone wood stove, I would have to say no. It is a fun stove to use. I don't want to say 100% user-friendly because the very first time I used the stove I was very, very pulled away from it, so that kind of drew me the other direction. But I would say that having some experience using the stoves now, yeah, I definitely would suggest this stove, but not as a standalone stove. And once again, that is only my own personal opinion. Take it as you will, but I really hope that the video of the stove spoke for itself. Now, learning some of the tweaks and the, you know, just the ins and outs of the stove, I think that my next video with the stove will be cooking a meal. I really wanted to learn the ins and outs of the stove, and using the burning tree, which is on my property here, I am allowed to focus myself more towards the stove and learning different things about the stove. So everyone, thank you very much for coming along. I hope that this was a better approach to the stove and really gave the stove a better shake. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.